Power Rankings, Week 2, featuring Jarek.
Hello.
At number 10, we have the London Legacy. Two things I really like about this team. One, the wide receivers. Hopkins had a okay week last week. He scored 11 points, but I think this week he can definitely bounce back against Tennessee. Marquise Goodwin, I think he got unlucky last week with some kind of injury, but whenever he comes back, I think he's a very solid candidate. He had a good connection with Garoppolo last year.
For things we don't really like about this team, though, so if you look at the running backs, there's no true RB1 with Hyde, Burkhead, and Williams all in kind of shared backfields right now. Burkhead does, with Devonta Freeman is also out, or he's struggling with some sort of injury, and Mark Ingram is suspended. So we're really just waiting on those two for now. But with this starting lineup for this week, Burkhead does have an open opportunity with Jeremy Hill out for the season, but we don't really like the running backs of this situation, which is why they're placed at number 10. So with number 9, we have the Shanghai Monkeys. So let's go look at their team. So two things that are pretty good about this team are obviously the two running backs. You have two really good young running backs with Saquon Barkley and Leonard Fournette. It's a little unlucky with Leonard Fournette's hamstring injury, which held him out since the second quarter of last week. So that's going to be a little bit of a question mark, but I think his running backs are the most solid part of his team.
The wide receivers, on the other hand, they're all pretty good wide receivers. You have Stephon Diggs, Josh Gordon, Will Fuller, a lot of talent there, but a lot of them are pretty boom or bust from week to week. You don't really know when they're going to do good. I think the most consistent out of them is definitely Stephon Diggs. This team's really looking just to cross their fingers the wide receivers do good in order to pull out some wins. At number 8, we have the San Antonio Scorchers. What I like about this team is Kareem Hunt. He's basically the center of the team. I would also say Larry Fitzgerald. So Larry Fitzgerald and Kareem Hunt are probably going to be the main scorers for the team, and they're going to be the ones scoring most of the points. Larry Fitzgerald's pretty consistent. Kareem Hunt less so, but he has higher highs than Fitzgerald, I would say.
Also, I just want to point out he also has Devontae Adams, who is a very solid wide receiver number 1. But the biggest problem with this team is obviously looking here. Not only do they not have a lot of star power on the team, but they're also getting ravaged by injuries right now. As you can see just by their starting lineup, Alshon Jeffrey is out, Devontae Adams is questionable, Greg Olsen is out, and then not really a very inspiring bench either. So that's why this team is at number 8. Number 7 is the Toronto Snowmen. Let's look at their team. So I think this team's biggest strength right now is that it's all around the most average team in terms of being solid. We have like good but not great players at almost every single position here, with people like Cook, and Nunwa, Demaryius Thomas are all very decent players at their position, but they're lacking a bit of star power with they have Ezekiel Elliott, but once Le'Veon Bell, who is on their bench, comes back, this team will most definitely shoot up the rankings.
Yeah, and probably the biggest thing holding this team back from going higher is the lack of star power in the wide receiver position specifically. Inunwa had a good week 1, so maybe he can rise up to the occasion. Hogan was supposed to be good. I think he just had a bad game. He can probably bounce back. Demaryius Thomas was just obtained in a trade, and this was mostly done to stabilize this wide receiver situation. Thomas is known for always having a really high floor, so it's looking up, but it's not quite there yet. At number 6, we have the Orlando Boomslangs, who surprised a lot of people because they were ranked number 10 last week, and they are the biggest risers this week. The thing I like about this team is the wide receivers mostly, who are on their bench right now. Michael Thomas didn't even start for this team last week, and they almost got a win, so imagine where they could be with him. You've got Brandon Marshall, who did okay. And then starting for them, AJ Green did really well. Robert Woods, he was good last season, and maybe he can replicate it this season. Randall Cobb got that nice late touchdown pass. So all the wide receivers all around good, and Melvin Gordon's a really good running back.
But this team also has some glaring problems. You see in the running back too is C.J. Anderson, who does not belong there. He's projected 5.36 points. And then you look on his bench, he doesn't have really that many better options with Alfred Morris and Rashad Penny. Also, another thing holding this back is its GM's, I guess you could say the brain power of their GM. Because, let's see, they started Des Bryant, who is not even on an NFL team, in their wide receiver 2 spot. So, implying that their GM learns their lesson and starts their actual good wide receivers and begins to research a little bit more, I think this team can shoot up the rankings and it could even become maybe in the top 5, top 4 maybe.
Yeah. Reminds me of the Browns. Decent talent, needs some work in management.
Yeah. Now, number 5, we have the Paris Storm. So, this team, obviously, their biggest strength right here is Mike Evans and Odell Beckham Jr., 2 of the best wide receivers in the game right now. Both of them get the lion's share of the work on their team. They also have... Their running backs are solid, but... like I said, their biggest strength is going to be from wide receiver.
Running backs, as Jarek said, they're solid, but they're not really stars. The biggest potential is Christian McCaffrey, but Alex Collins had a bad fumble and started getting limited after that, and neither of the other 2 running backs are especially inspiring.
Yep.
So that's why this team is around number 5 right now. At number 4, we have the Beijing Dragons. So they recently traded for Jordan Howard, which I think is a good trade. He's a high RB2, low RB1. And they also have the best wide receivers in the game with Antonio Brown and Julio Jones, which will obviously be carrying the lion's share of this team's points.
He had an unlucky loss last week to the Portland Flexers, and this is because while his team looks amazing on paper, what he really lacks is consistency with players like LaShawn McCoy, and like Jordan Howard has not been the most consistent player from last year. Like what he could really benefit from is like more consistency with his running backs, because his wide receiver situation is by far one of the better, if not the best ones in the league. So he just needs to find some consistency at running back. Now, number 3 of the Tokyo Moose. Here, the Tokyo Moose have the best running back duo in the league. They have 2 top 5 running backs with Alvin Kamara and David Johnson. So that's their biggest strength here. Corey Davis also turned out to get a lot of targets. I think he got around 13. And Emmanuel Sanders is also very solid at wide receiver.
The only thing I would say is their quote flex position, so like not their top 2 in each position, could get a bit stronger. It's not like they're weak, which is why they're a top 3 team, but I guess you could get more than Allen Robinson and Nelson Aguilar.
Yeah, those 2 are pretty inconsistent.
Number 2, we have the Portland Flexers. Had a really close win against the Beijing Dragons. Obviously, their big strong point is Todd Gurley and Joe Mixon. They're going to be scoring points week in, week out for this team. And wide receivers aren't bad either.
Yeah, I really like Juju Smith-Schuster. He had a very good week last week, and I think even with Antonio Brown on the same team, he's poised to always have at least a decent share of catches as well. What this team lacks is, let's see, Amari Cooper had a pretty disappointing week last week. So also, since he's a top 2 team, the biggest problem here is the flex positions, as we said, with Chris Carson and Amari Cooper. If you look on his bench here, Kerryon Johnson has potential to become RB1 in Detroit, but Detroit's backfield is like one of the least trustworthy in the league. He has D.D. Westbrook who had a very solid week last week. I think it was at least surprising for him taking a step up from his rookie season. So all he really needs is to just bolster his flex positions, and this team could be number one.
And at number one, we have the New Mexico Haciendas, which is a controversial decision, but I think they deserve it. They scored 180 points, and I think until another team can match that amount of firepower, then they're the undisputed number one. So what I really like about this team is how much like wide receiver power they have. They have Tyreek Hill, who is number one wide receiver right now, and then Keenan Allen, T.Y. Hilton, who both have chances to be wide receiver ones, and Golden Tate, who's always a solid wide receiver two. Even Rob Gronkowski, who's basically a wide receiver in the tight end position.
Yeah. I also like Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay. I think that this might sound a little wild and outrageous, but like since they're an RB duo, they're obviously going to gain comparisons to what the Saints did with Kamara and Ingram last year. But I think that they have very good potential to have. There's a lot of potential for them to be a two-headed monster with Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay, and I really like Royce Freeman this week because I think that he's gonna have a good game against the Chiefs, who have a pretty bad run defense. But at the same time, I think his win was a little bit of there's doubt in his win because it's not off. Tyreek Hill is never gonna probably in the season. This is just my feeling, but I don't think he's ever gonna score 38.8 points again in the season. And James Conner that was an exciting debut, but the chances of him replicating that week in and week out are very rare since he's still a rookie. So I think
they aren't the number one team, like they aren't like heads and shoulders above everyone else. I think it's a very close between the top three teams right now. So I don't think they're like miles ahead of everyone else, but I think until another team can like replicate an 180-point performance, they deserve to like break the tiebreaker, so to speak. Obviously, their biggest weakness is going to be James Conner. Not as a weakness right now, but there's always Le'Veon Bell looming around. You don't know. It's uncertain. And if James Conner were to get benched for Le'Veon Bell, which is a big maybe, they don't really have anyone else that can take his spot. So that's a big maybe, and that's why they're the number one team, in my opinion.